There is
Mhm.
no scientist worth their salt. There's no philosopher. There's no psychologist that will say, oh, I know what human potential is, or I know
Mhm.
what your potential is. Nobody knows.
Mhm.
But what we've learned, a little bit that we've learned, is that our capacity to grow individually and collectively is incredibly immense. So what stops us? It's usually self-imposed limitations at this point, because at this point we need to take charge of our own system, especially if you decide that you're going to be a conscious human being. Then we start to notice, okay, what are the thoughts that I'm operating on? What are the emotions that I'm operating on? What are the beliefs that I'm operating on? What are the behaviors that are not giving me the kind of result that I'm seeking? And if those things are not being analyzed, and the old patterns that are not working, they're not disconnected, you'll just continue to do the same thing and hope that something will change, and
Different,
it
yeah.
won't.
This is your Real Estate Vibe Show, and I'm your host, Pinky Lumba. Today, I have a very special guest, my good friend, Faisal Ensaun. Faisal is a certified high performance coach since 2015. He's also the co founder of Coaching Mastery community, where he helps teach other coaches to hone and further coaching abilities and their business practices. Faisal has coached over 2,000 individuals with diverse backgrounds. He runs a space creators community where he holds weekly high performance and personal development sessions in a small group setting. He guides and teaches people to create the space for their potential, vision, and inner self to surface. And today we'll discuss with him how to tap into your high potential. Welcome, Faisal.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Binky.
I'm going to start with this. I read your bio and we met a few times before. We've been friends over a while. I know you had an amazing journey until now. Please share with me, how did you become who you are today?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. That's where do you want me to start? I could start what got me to move more towards this stuff. Would you like me to start with that?
Yes.
So I'll share with you the experience of it, because that was really powerful for me. And it was an important moment in my life. For me, it goes back to this moment in my early 20s. And I remember at the time, I was completely disconnected from a lot of things in my life. And I still remember I was coming out of this subway station in Toronto region, and I felt disconnected. I felt overwhelmed. I felt frustrated. And as I'm coming out physically, I felt weak. I was watching everybody go about their business. Toronto is a pretty big, busy city. And I go in the corner, and I was feeling sick too. I had come out of a long night of quote unquote having fun, partying. And I just go in the corner, and I lean down, and I throw up on the floor. I see blood. Um, I'm not even surprised by that, because I had been abusing my body for so long until that moment. But something interesting happened in that moment. I felt all my emotions, probably for the first time. That physical pain somehow triggered, then the accumulation of all these frustrations somehow triggered for me to feel everything. And up until that moment, I had done my best to just shove everything down. I felt it. And a few minutes later, what I felt was this incredible level of joy and peace and connection. And to my young 20-year-old mind, I was like, am I going crazy? Because I didn't know what the hell was going on. Now, in retrospect, I know that just feeling all that helped me connect to a different part of me, and it helped me, I would say, connect to a more core part of myself, a deeper part of myself, but also got me re-engaged with my emotions, which we can touch on later, why that's so important. Now, that month, like after that, nothing like consciously changed where I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to do this, that, and the other. I automatically went towards change. I re-enrolled in college. I picked up a job on the weekend, so I couldn't go out. I was addicted to alcohol, drugs, all sorts of stuff. So I was like, I purposely put myself in a different path, and I literally couldn't go anywhere. It was 12-hour overnight shifts. So as soon as people would go out, I would go to work. And then somehow I developed that. And then I had a lot of time. I was a security guard at the time. So I developed this interest in studying other things outside of my engineering, the school that I was going into. So I started looking into philosophy, spirituality, history, psychology, because I had realized that up until that moment, a lot of things weren't working. I felt disconnected from my life, from my family, from my path, from my vision, from my purpose. And so as I started that path, it naturally kind of started leading me towards a different direction. I started discovering different aspects of myself. And just to give a little bit of background, I had just a few years before that, I had come from a different culture, Eastern culture, all the way to Canada. And that was a huge shock for me because up until that moment, I thought that whatever I was taught was reality, was objective reality. The reality was that that was just a cultural reality. And when I came here, I didn't understand how to connect with people. I didn't understand how to be. Almost everything that I was taught was the opposite of how people conducted themselves here. And that's what kind of pushed me kind of over the edge and took me on this path of kind of getting addicted to all sorts of stuff and not having the tools to deal with my own pain. But in the meantime, it helped me see a different paradigm of reality that, oh, my culture was subjective. This culture is subjective. They have their own ways. It works to some degree. It doesn't work to another degree. And in the process, I realized, okay, what have I been doing in this whole thing? And what I realized that most of my life was around other people's expectations.
That's true.
My parents, society, culture, religion. And I noticed the same exact thing here. Even though it was a different paradigm here, people did the same thing here, just in a different way. And then over time, as I went towards this, I started working in the engineering field. I worked for a couple of years. I got more and more frustrated. I was like, that's not for me. Because it's like one of those things, if anybody has watched Matrix, taking the red pill, you can't unsee anymore. Like, I can't do this. I don't care how much money I make. I don't see myself. I see myself being more and more miserable on this path. And so my wife and I, we made a big decision. We're like, you know what, let's go. We didn't know what it looked like. We're like, let's just go figure out a different path. And so we went to a couple of conferences. One was a spiritual conference. The other one was around like, how do you monetize something that you might love? It was created by Brandon Bush. We go there and all of a sudden I got connected to other incredible people. I was like, oh my God, these people exist. I'm not the only one. And then that opened up the path to coaching because that's where Brandon Bouchard offered the coaching program. And I realized that much of what I've done, the work that I've done over the decade plus on myself and helping others around me started coming around. I was like, oh, shoot, it is a work I'm doing. I'm just not getting paid for it. And so I started getting training in that area. And that led me towards the whole coaching and influencer world. And since then, it's just been one adventure after another. It has had its own challenges. Obviously, entrepreneurship has its challenges, life has its challenges, but my path has been, I feel, much more purposeful, much more aligned. Created the kind of life that I want, and I'm growing more and more in that area. The kind of relationships that I love, the kind of people that I want to work with, my team, my collaborators, my clients, and I'm consistently growing. I mean, I'm in Colorado right now, in the middle of the mountains, on adventures, and then I'm going and speaking at an event, a paid forward event, and I'll be collaborating with all sorts of multifamily investors there. I'll be doing live coaching session there. That's my life. I love that. That's what I created. But I love that. That's what I wanted to create. And to me, it's still surreal because from that moment to this, there's a huge internal difference. The way I felt, the way I saw myself, the way I perceived myself, the way I perceived others, the way I saw my purpose, the way I saw my legacy, like none of those things existed. I might look similar, minus some less hair, much less hair, but internally, I'm a completely different human being from what I was.
I love it. I love it. That's super awesome journey. That's what I'm saying. You've had an amazing journey. So now you love whatever you're doing. You know, that was your dream position to be in, but it took a long time to get here. Or I would say there was a huge shift because you had this emotional overload. And then you went through that episode that you were saying at the party and then kind of shifted your mindset. So if I put it in the technology terms, you kind of rebooted yourself and cleaned out all the unnecessary stuff and kind of got back to the track where you wanted to be. So in your opinion, how should we define our life? Should we just reboot our lives time to time, kind of shut down and restart just to keep it clean and simple versus having all this emotional overload? And then at a moment, we'll get some kind of enlightenment kind of thing. Okay, no, we have to live something different and we are totally living wrong until now. What is your take on that?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't presume to tell people what they should with their life,
Right.
for one thing, but I will it helps to understand human behavior and how it works.
Mm-hmm.
And much of my journey has been like doing what I love, and the journey that I'm on, that's a bonus. But for me, the deeper thing is that inside I'm at peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll share this with you guys. The other day, a couple of weeks back, or a week and a half back, I was just lying down and I was about to go to sleep. I was really exhausted that day. And my wife was reading a book to both my daughters on the bed, and I was just staring at them. I was just looking at them and just their facial expressions and how the kids were excited, and she was excited about reading for them, and they were sharing all kinds of ideas and everything. And I was just looking and I was feeling what I was feeling. First of all, I felt an immense level of gratitude. I felt connection. I felt peace. And this came to me in this, I've done this meditation for a long time. A lot of people might not get it, but it's around death. And it's like you look at death for what it is. It's a reality. And I was like, if I close my eyes and it doesn't open the next day and I just go, I would be at peace. This is I've done what I needed to do. Everything else is a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, feeling that, being at peace, and knowing that you are on the right path, on the path that feels aligned with you, is a life well lived. And then there are so many other components of it, but just that moment of presence and connection is powerful. A lot of people don't have that. They don't have that not because they can't get that, but because, like you said, they've overloaded a lot of things on top of each other. And I'll share a couple of stories around this. First, there was this question I think Michelangelo was asked, how did you create this beautiful statue of David? And he's like, well, I didn't. I just chipped away whatever was covering it. And that's our predicament, is that we are covered by all sorts of crap that has nothing to do with who we are at our core. And I'll share a story with you and you might relate to that. So did you ever go on those elephant rides in India?
Yes.
Yeah,
multiple times.
So I lived in Pakistan, and the same thing in Thailand region. So I'll share a story, partially true, partially not, but it'll communicate this message very well. So the way it's framed, you can actually Google this, is like these giant, magnificent beings, these elephants, they're tied to this pole. And they're tied to a big rope, to a pole or a chain. You guys can check that out. So from what I've heard, the way they would train them is that when they're little, they tie them to a pole, and the elephant struggles and tries, because every living being, they want their freedom and their idea for their experience of freedom, whatever that is. Tries to struggle to break free, break free, break free. Obviously, it's little, it can't do that. And at some point, something happens at a subconscious level and it just gives up. And then over time, as it grows up, it's used to that pattern. You're watching that giant thing that can run through a house and it won't even feel much, but it's tied to a little pole.
Mm-hmm.
That same thing has happened to us, except that
That's
pole
true.
and that rope is not physical in nature, that's in our mind.
All the limitations, yes.
Yeah. So we've been bombarded by so many thoughts, beliefs, ideas about how should I live? How should I do this? How should I appear? And part of it is a necessary structure of society, but part of them are either outdated, doesn't apply, very subjective to a context, and it's just been passed on from one generation to another. And then teachers started passing on and one. And as I went on my journey, I realized a lot of the people that taught me this stuff didn't realize it either. Mm-hmm. They were just stuck in their own mind, and they were just passing on whatever they knew. Mm-hmm. And over time, it just becomes a generational pattern, and we carry that on. And we don't realize it. It shows up in the most simple things. So I literally talked to an investor today. He has a very unique model for a multifamily. It's a little bit different than most people are doing, and he has the system pat down. Mm-hmm. He has like 4 small multifamilies. Mm-hmm. And he's looking for capital and to pay off his debt. And he's like, okay, if I stay on this course and I pay it off, if I work this much, I can get 1 or 2 more houses. And I had to ask him, like, is that what you really want to do? He's like, no, but I don't have any other choices. Like, have you considered scaling this? Have you considered getting other investors on board? Have you thought about sharing? And two things that are coming up. First of all, he didn't allow himself to even share that because he might have an internal block around connecting with people. So trust issues, that where do we pick up in our environment? And second, he is not even thinking about the scaling component of something that he has already made it's workable. And as we go deeper into it, he's like, oh shit, I can do this. And in 2 years, I could have 10 houses versus 1 or 2. And that's a much more scalable growth pattern than like linear, slow, stale. And that's just in relation to business, but it shows up in every part of our life. So essentially, how do we, our potential is always there. And
That's
like,
true.
there is no scientist worth their salt. There's no philosopher. There's no psychologist that will say, oh, I know what human potential is, or I know what your potential is. Nobody knows. Nobody can decide that because we don't actually know enough. But what we've learned, a little bit that we've learned, is that our capacity to grow individually and collectively is incredibly immense. So what stops us? It's usually self-imposed limitations at this point, because at this point we need to take charge of our own system, especially if you decide that you're going to be a conscious human being. Then we start to notice, okay, what are the thoughts that I'm operating on? What are the emotions that I'm operating on? What are the beliefs that I'm operating on? What are the behaviors that are not giving me the kind of result that I'm seeking? And if those things are not being analyzed, and the old patterns that are not working, they're not disconnected, you'll just continue to do the same thing and hope that something will change. And it won't.
You said it very well. It's just a conditioning from the very childhood, like I've heard, at the age 7, the mind is kind of fully developed. And then you have already grasped everything around you. And then you just keeping on, repeating the same patterns throughout your life. So despite of the fact that we all know that our past performance or whatever we did in the past is not an indication to a future or the present, but we still keep on doing the same mistakes or same things over and over again. To get out of that cycle is important, but at the same time, it's not that easy than said, right?
Yeah, it's not. So, and this is something your viewers have to decide for themselves. Can you build a business without doing all that work? Yes, you can. The question is, what is the kind of life that you want? Because a lot of people will think, well, I want to be a millionaire. Great. I want to have time freedom. Great. So let's say you are a millionaire or a billionaire, you have that time freedom. What are you going to be doing with that? Walk me through. And I literally get my clients to walk through this. I'm like, so put yourself in that vision that you've created. You have all the time in the world. You have all the money in the world. Wake up in the morning and walk me through what you're going to do in your day. And then they start walking through it. And you begin to see the lack of clarity there. They don't actually know. And the reason why they're saying, I want to be a millionaire, billionaire with time freedom, because somebody else gave them that vision. That's not
That's true.
Somebody else gave them the idea, and they think that it's a great idea. And I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying, does that feel aligned with you? Is that what you're seeking in your life? And so the stuff of life is not enough to think about. Your experience is important to think about in that life too. So what does that mean? What kind of life are you seeking? Are you seeking the kind of life where you have joy, you have connection, you have peace, you have fulfillment, you have a sense of purpose, you have collaboration, you have community, you have family? Is that important to you? If it's important to you, then you need to do the deeper work. If you just want a bunch of money and you just want to create time freedom so you can go and basically do whatever you want, then you can, there are very much quicker ways to do that. It's just that the payoff that you're looking for is not there. And I'll share with you, the reason I know this is because I have clients right now. So I literally have clients right now who have done that. And then, so what they do is they actually don't need to work. So they work to pass time for about 10 hours a week, maybe. And then the rest of the time, they'll go live in different parts of the world. Yeah. Great. And you would think that that's exciting. In the beginning, it is exciting. And even for them, it's like, it's a good pastime. But it's no different than you going to the grocery after it becomes normal.
That's true.
After it becomes normal to you, you go to the movies.
Right.
It's we call it the ground of being. Like, you don't think about the ground when you walk on it because it's so normal to you, right?
That's true.
But if there's an earthquake, you're going to start thinking about it. So they do all that. They will find like these little things to do, like getting involved in hobbies and sports, but that's not what drives human beings. We know enough at this point with human related to human beings that you need a sense of purpose. Usually people's sense of purpose is connected to their core, what they feel aligned with their faith, their what they feel passionate about, those kind of things. If you don't have that, it doesn't matter how many things and how much time freedom you have. In fact, that could drive more insanity if you have more time freedom. And a sense of connection, we know, is generally very important for human beings. Now, at what level that varies, but maybe you want a deeper sense of connection with your spouse, with your children. No amount of money will give you that. You need to work on that part yourself, deep down. So that means when I talk about facing those emotions, those thoughts that limit us from connecting, there are people who won't be able to go and hug their children. That's a problem. There are people who can't connect with their children when they're teenagers. There are people who can't build teams and collaborate with others in a better way. And we know that in the multifamily space, that's an important component. And those are limitations that hold us back. And they're not like they're habituated limitations. They're not natural to human beings in the sense that, oh, we were born and we developed that. No, we developed it within our context, within our environment. If you just watch most children, they will literally go up to somebody who's like, you want to be a friend? You want to be my friend? You want to play? And they'll go to the next one. You want to play? That's the nature of human beings, is that we are curious, we're adventurous. In the general sense, we're creative. We want to connect with people. We want to grow. Now, everybody sets a bar for themselves, or their bar is determined by their environment. And if connecting to that potential matters to you, creating that quality of life matters to you, that requires you to do the work, which means that listening to this podcast is not enough. Reading books is not enough. Those are good things to have. It gives you some insight, but it means that in your day-to-day life, in moment to moment, what kind of decisions are you making? So in that moment when you wake up and you're about to do something and your wife stops you or your husband stops you and you get annoyed and frustrated, what is your response in that moment? When your child is wanting to spend some time with you and you're too distracted to even notice that child, how do you deal with that moment? When you need to make a strategic decision to scale the business versus contracting, how do you deal with that? Those are the moments of work. It requires awareness, and it requires you to break old patterns. It requires you to develop new patterns towards creating that kind of freedom and that quality of life. And that's the work. And that doesn't just come from reading and consuming information. It has to become your practice, day-to-day practice.
That's experiential, that's just like breaking the old patterns and starting something new. But that's again a pattern, unless you realize it, because a lot of people, I would say, they are, tough nuts to crack, because we kind of, get entangled in our own bubble and our own patterns. We feel we have the comfort level there. You know what I'm saying?
We all do.
Yeah. So that comfort is very hard to move away from that comfort level. It's like, oh my God, like, for example, this is my house. I'm living in this house. It's going to be super hard for me to find the exact same thing, because we always look for the exact same comfort zone or exact same things that we have experienced before. Because even I have seen that in my own life, even if I go to buy something, for example, at Macy's, Nordstrom, I have seen the colors that I already have in my closet. I tend to like those colors again. And I'm just questioning myself, why I'm doing that? Don't I already have something similar? Because it's in my experience and I naturally attracted towards that. And I'm just like fearful trying something new. Oh, I might not look good in that. Let me not try. I don't want to make another effort to come out and return it or exchange it. You know what I'm saying? It's a very small little thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's what it is. So it's, in technical terms, our brain works with efficiency, and it creates patterns. It creates neural pathways. So it means that when you create any kind of habit, and we always create habits knowingly or unknowingly, like the way you wake up in the morning, even though you might not have a morning routine, you have a habit system. You will pick up the brush a certain way when you're brushing your teeth. You will have certain strokes of the brush. You will wash your face first, or you will do something else first. If you really pay attention, your brain develops patterns. And those patterns are related to the way that your self dialogue comes up. You talked about at 7 years old, a lot of the patterns get solidified, and that's like it's not that the human brain doesn't grow after that. Actually, we're learning more and more that it grows all the way to, I think, late 20s. We used to think that it was before that, but at 7, it's a monumental point, because that's the point where the child's conscious mind begins to develop. And it's starting to look at things from their point of view, and you start to develop a personality, develop more and more and more. And by the time they hit teenage years, that's an important pattern. That's where they start to notice, like, where they belong, where they start to go around friends and they feel frustrated. And it's an important moment that if anybody has had teenagers, they know that if you've gone through teenage years, you know that those are difficult periods. And then your early 20s, like these timelines are important, where certain things get solidified for you. Whatever gets solidified, it's likely that they will stay with you unless you can change the pattern. This is how psychologists and psychotherapists can predict your pattern very easily, because all they have to do is ask you a few questions, and they will know what you will do on a day-to-day basis. Like they will know it, even certain, like when people go to these fortune tellers, they're fairly intuitive, and they will ask you a couple of questions, and they will look at you based on your responses, and they'll predict certain things about you. That's not a magic thing. They're intuitive in terms of your psychology. They're intuitive in terms of your energy. So then how do we break patterns? And that's the hardest thing for many human beings to do. And patterns are broken not when you make big shifts in life. It's in the small moments. So a couple of things happen. So if you have a death in the family, or somebody's ill, or you go through a difficult period like I did in my life, like it basically stops your system. And like you naturally don't operate, at least temporarily, based on the old pattern. So often you start noticing other things that you didn't.
That's true.
People start to question, as a lot of times, it's existential things that you think about, or your connections, or what am I doing with my life? And we know people go through midlife type of crises because now they've done everything they were told to do. It's not giving them the experience. Now they're like, oh shit, what now? I have no direction. Where do I go from here? So these moments help us, but then you have a moment of choice. When you wake up in the morning, what are you going to do? Are you going to focus on other people's social media, or are you going to focus on your own vision? Before you see your family, are you going to show up frustrated, disconnected, and distracted, or are you going to show up present, intentional, and connected? When you go to work on the thing, are you going to decide to be focused and keep pulling yourself back, or you're going to be distracted? When the time comes for you to make a difficult decision to go meet somebody that scares you around the business, and are you going to take that, or are you not going to? Like, these moments determine pattern shifts. And you have hundreds of opportunities. Like, it's not one or two. So this can be freeing, because a lot of people think that, oh, opportunities come once in a while. They think of like that real estate opportunity. No, that doesn't determine your life. It's moment by moment you make decisions, and most of your decisions are subconscious in nature based on old patterns. But what if you can stop and pause? Okay, is this going to serve me in my path? Which naturally means that you need to understand what your vision is, not other people's vision for you, not other people's goals for you. So one of the first things that I actually do with my clients is, I'm actually doing that today in a meetup, is walk them through their vision.
I was going to ask you that question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Because it starts with that. And your vision. So ideally speaking, your vision is what connects to your heart, to who you are deep down, what matters to you. And a lot of times it's not obvious.
That's true.
And so the way I describe vision, a vision is an experience that is in your inner world of an experience that you're seeking in the outer world. Now, here's the thing. people hold on to those experiences, they shrink it back based on what's practical around them. So somebody might have a vision that they want to be a great musician, but then they're like, oh, I don't know if that's practical. But that's the thing that matters to them. Somebody might say, you know what, I don't want to do this marriage thing and settle down right now. I just want to go and travel the world. But they're like, no, what if that person doesn't like it? Or what if this person doesn't like it? What if my culture doesn't agree with that? Another person might be is like, oh, I really want to get married early on. But well, what if I'm irresponsible? Like there's a reason why you're getting these thoughts and visions, right? But we all will kind of doubt it based on what we're told. And then we craft a goal system based on whatever vision is given to us. And the vision usually looks like this, one of two variations. I'll go to school, get a job, buy your house, get married, do that. Now, most multifamily investors I've met, they've done all of that. They come to a point and then they look back, in the words of Alan Watts, with a certain sense of feeling cheated. This is it. Like, this is what I worked for like the first 40 years of my life. It's not that there was anything wrong with those things. It's just that it wasn't their experience. They were told to create that experience.
That's true.
So
and they're not living.
They're not living it. They're just waiting for the next thing, right? They're waiting for the next thing. So then they come up with a new goal system, and they don't realize that that's given to them as well.
That's
and it's
true.
like, oh, well, that didn't work out. What I want is time freedom with my family, with my community. These are all good things. The problem is that, and they're going to be like, okay, I'm going to build this business. And when I build it, I'm going to come back and focus on all this stuff. So now they spend another 5 to 6 years focusing on the business, and they'll work 50, 60, 70, 80 hours building it. And guess what takes a back seat? Their experience, their growth, their family, their community, their purpose, and they get involved in the business. And then they get 6 years later, they're just as frustrated that they were. They might have more money. They might even have time freedom, but nobody wants to connect with them. They have to climb this uphill battle of, oh, what, my wife and kids didn't wait for me? Their experience continues while you're off doing other things. It's not like life stops. So while they can get themselves to say, okay, I can support you, but you're never there. Your purpose, your passion the light gets dimmer and dimmer. It gets more painful, and you get more and more frustrated. And then you get to that point again, and then you're like, okay, what do I do now? That's where many of my clients, or at least some of them, come in. They're like, okay, how do I reconnect? And that's one of the hardest things to do. And I've told my clients this before, is that those people that you're trying to be like, they would hand you most of their wealth if you can give them a pill that would solve their problem. And there's no such pill. They have to work on it for the next 2 to 3 years, just like you have to do right now. And that's building a better foundation than if you, oh, when I have the money and time freedom, I'll do this stuff.
Do it right now. I agree with you 100%. Because time is now. Whatever you wanted to do or whatever you're thinking to do in the future, do it right now. Even though you don't have it, you have to think that you have it, because you have it. I mean, I don't know how to say it, but this is the truth, right? You have everything with you right now, right here. It's just a matter of the realization. But thank you so much, Faisal. We are end of time for today. But definitely I'll have you back, and we'll do a second episode on that, how to survive in this economic trend that we are in right now. So I'm in to further this discussion, and thank you for being with me today. I really love your insight on each and everything, whatever we talk about.
Yeah, no, thank you for being here. And for anybody who's watching it, reach out to me. A lot of times this can be solved fairly quickly if you go through a process. A lot of us go through it, and I love books. I read them constantly. I have a book right there, and I'm reading. They will give you insights, but you need deeper work, where that comes for you through your mentorship, through coaching, or through being around the right community. You need a little bit of a deeper work than what you've been going through. And I'd love to have a quick conversation. If I can serve you, like I said, I'm connected a community of coaches that I can connect you with. But that investment will pay off 100 times more than probably any other investment you're going to do, because that's an investment in yourself, in your purpose, in your relationships, in your business, and so many other aspects of your life.
Yeah, definitely. Can you tell my viewers how to reach out to you?
Yeah, so my name should appear. So it'll be faisalensaun.com. You can actually book a quick intro call with me. I don't charge anything for that. I just spend that time getting to know you and trying to see what are you trying to do. I'm not selling anything on that call. If I can support you, I'll give you, if you haven't gone through an experience of coaching, I'll give you something as a bonus there. Or if I feel like it's not me, I can connect you with the right group of people or with the right individuals to support you. So you can just go to my website and book an intro call with me. You should see options there.
Thanks, Faisal. It was good to see you today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for sharing your stage with me.